number 4 on page 122. Just to alert you, we're doing the Torah and Haftarah in a slightly different way today, as you will see when we get there. Page 122, we open with the Marto. And as we prepare to celebrate Shabbat, I know many of us are thinking of Lockie, and we send our love to Frankie and to Jane, who are with us today. And I thought we'd actually take the blessing that's on the top of page 123, and then we'll read together the prayer on the just below it as we think about how we mark events in our community. So the blessing's at the top of page 123, and it says, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozeh Yisrael b'gvura. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for the strength that comes to us through our community. And let's read together at the bottom of page 122. Eternal God, we come before you surrounded by members of our community. With them we share our happiness, and it becomes greater. Our troubles, and they become smaller. May we never be mean to give, nor too proud to receive. For in giving and receiving we discover you and begin to understand the meaning of life. Let us not separate ourselves from the true strength of our community, the experience and wisdom of old people, the hopes of the young, and the examples of care and courage which sustain us. Give us an open mind and a generous heart to welcome those who need us and to admit your presence into our daily life. Page 124, Ashreinu.
Ashreinu
Umanayim, umanayim, umanayim goraleinu. Umanayim, umanayim, umanayim goraleinu. Umanayim. Mayafa, 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 Yerushateinu, Ashreinu, Mayafa, 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 Yerushateinu, Ashreinu. Baruch she'ama v'haya ha'olam baruchu. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamlulal befi amo. Meshubach umfoar b'lshon chasidav v'avadav. Bishvachot uzmirot. Gadelchan amlichecha. Malkeinu yachid chai ha'alamim. Baruch ata Adonai melech mehulal batishbachot. We praise you, sovereign God, to whom all praise is due. Put to page 125, Nishma. Kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Ruach kol basa tefaer utromem zichrecha malkeinu tamid min haolam yad haolam atael atael. Page 127. And if anybody would like to lead us in English in Psalm 93, please step up to the reading desk. Page 127, Psalm 93.
The Eternal One reigns in grandeur robed.
Robed and girded with strength.
The world stands firm.
It shall not be moved,
Your throne is established from of old.
for you are everlasting.
The oceans roar, eternal God. The thundering oceans roar.
The thundering oceans rage.
Yet greater than the roaring waves, mightier than the breaking seas.
You stand supreme on high,
Sure are the proofs of your power, O God.
and holiness adorns your house forever. We rise. Yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu, ha'el ha'melech ha'gdol v'ha'kadosh b'shamayim u'va'aretz, ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu, shir u'shvacha, halel v'zimra, berachot v'hodot, me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'bocheh b'shirei zimra. We praise you, God. May you accept our songs of praise. Page 135. Baruch Adonai Amavorach La'olam Va'ed. Before you're seated, there's another opportunity to read, if you wish to, on pages 136 and 137. If you sit down, I'll assume that you don't want to read.
praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe, Maker of light and Creator of darkness, Author of peace and Creator of all things. In your mercy, you give light to the earth and all who live on it, and in your goodness, you renew creation continually, day by day. How manifold are your works, O God! With wisdom have you made them all. The world is full of your creations. Your handiwork proclaims your praise. The radiant stars bear witness to your glory.
Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzei ha'ma'arot. We praise you, O God, Creator of light.
Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching, make us faithful to your commandments, and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity.
Baruch atah Adonai, Abocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. We praise you, O God. Now you have called your people Israel to serve you. Stand for the Shema. Hafta eit Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavecha, u'v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol me'odecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha. V'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha b'veitecha, v'vlechtecha v'aderech, v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha, v'shatam al yadecha. V'hayu lo totafot bein inecha, u'chtavtam al mozizot u'visharecha. Tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedoshim le'lechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem. Let us be seated. You redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then with great joy Moses, Miriam and all Israel together sang to you this song. Nohora, Tehilot, Ohose, Ele, Nohora, Tehilot, Ohose, Ele, Shira Chadasha, Shibhu Go'olim, Leshimcha Safat Hayam, Yachad Kulam, Hodu Vehimlchu, Ve'amru, Adonai, Loch, Le'olam, Va'ed, Adonai, Yimloch, Le'olam, Va'ed.
Baruch atah
Amidah, the standing prayer, page 140.
Adonai, Safatai Tiftachu via Gita Hilatecha. Adonai, Safatai Tiftachu via Gita Hilatecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imoteinu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכה חסדות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מזריח השמש ומוריד הטל. מכלכל
חיים בחסד,
מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפור. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, עומד המלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנת החיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. לקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאיך.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות,
ולכל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
במקומך ומכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה.
דור ודור נגיד גודלך, ונצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. שבך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Praise you, eternal one, the holy God. Be seated. There are a couple of last opportunities if anybody wants to read. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through. We read together. Foot of page 142. Inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. Thank you for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy, for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness. Consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
Yismachu v'malachutecha, shamarei, 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 Shabbat, v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismachu v'malachutecha, shamarei, 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 Shabbat, v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadoshi, V'kidas to Shabbat, Chemdat Yamim, Otakarat HaShabbat, Yismachu v'malachutecha, Shamarei, Shamarei, Shamarei Shabbat, V'korei oneg Shabbat, Yismachu v'malachutecha, Shamarei, Shamarei, Shamarei Shabbat, V'korei oneg Shabbat, Zecher
L'maaseh b'Bereshit Shabbat.
Zecher l'maaseh b'Bereshit Shabbat,
Shabbat.
Yismachu v'malachutecha,
Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat.
V'korei
Oneg Shabbat.
Yismachu
V'malachutecha. Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat. V'korei oneg Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat, she'otecha levadecha b'yirah na'avod. We praise you, O God, for the holiness of the Sabbath, and to whom alone we worship in reverence. Middle of page 144. We give thanks that you, eternal one, are our God, as you are the God of our ancestors. You are the rock of our life, the power that shields us in every age. We thank and praise you for our lives, which are in your hand, our souls, which are in your keeping, for the signs of your presence we encounter every day, and for your wondrous gifts at all times, morning, noon, and night. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha lecha na'el hadot. We praise you, God, sovereign source of goodness, to whom our thanks are due.
Sim Shalom.
Shalom.
Uvracha. Sim
Shalom, Torah, uvracha.
Sim Shalom.
Shalom, Torah, uvracha. Sim Shalom, Torah, uvracha.
Chen v'chesed.
Chen v'chesed.
Chen v'chesed v'rachamim.
Rachamim.
Chen v'chesed.
Chen v'chesed.
Chen v'chesed v'rachamim.
Rachamim.
Rachamim. Sim Shalom.
Shalom,
Tova.
Torah, uvracha. Sim Shalom, Torah, uvracha. Aleinu,
Kol
Israel. Aleinu, Aleinu,
Kol
Israel.
Amen.
Mecha.
Sim Shalom.
Shalom,
Tova.
uvracha. Sim Shalom, Tova, uvracha. Eino Avinu, kulanu ke'echad ba'or panecha. Ki va'or panecha natat alanu Adonai Eloheinu. Torat chayim v'avat chesed. Utzedaka uvracha v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom. טוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל ואת כל העמים, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, עושה השלום. We praise you, God, the source of peace. Now some moments of silence. There's a guided reading on pages 145 and 146. Smiat Torah, the reading of the Torah, page 481.
En kamacha be'Elohim Adonai, v'en kamasecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dovador.
Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Imloch, La'olam Va'ed, Adonai Oz Le'amo Yitein, Adonai Yevarech et Amo Shalom. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadolu l'Adonai iti, u'naromama shemo yachdav.
L'chech Adonai hagdola, v'hagvura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach
Hod kichal v'shamayim,
v'haaretz,
Adonai Amlecha, v'hamid naseh lechol l'rosh. So let me first of all introduce you to the reading of the Torah. For the traditional community, the actual physical reading of the Torah is an important event. And probably has its origins, of course, in a time when either the tradition was oral, so it was reciting something, or in a time when most people couldn't read and didn't have access to books, never mind the internet. The public reading was a very important way of people hearing what was in the Torah. I must say I have less sympathy with that these days. It doesn't mean we shouldn't read Torah, publicly or otherwise. But, in fact, would I do better to send to everybody the weekly portion and say, read this? Come to synagogue having read this, and we'll discuss it, or we'll exchange about it, or we'll study it. Particularly since most of our Jews today don't study the Torah on a daily or a weekly basis. So we're going to do something a bit different today. We're not going to have a formal public reading of Torah. We are going to study it together. And there's a particular reason why I picked today, partly because I thought there'd be a sort of nice, familiar home crowd, not a big bar mitzvah where you can't possibly do it, or a load of grumpy people who come occasionally, but a nice home crowd today. And that's number one. But the second is, the Torah itself is rather fascinating but complicated. Or fascinating but oozing with details. I could have chosen any bit of it. We're in the parashat Ki Teitzei, which means when you go out. And Teitzei here refers to when, the first words are Ki Teitzei le'milchama, when you go out to war. And you think, oh, it's all going to be all about military legislation. It's not in fact about military legislation. It's about personal responsibility and private legislation primarily. And it starts, the first bit is about what you do with a woman captive that you want to marry, or that might want to marry you. How much choice was, we don't know. By tradition, when you conquered a land, you took the women in as slaves. But if you decided you wanted to marry a particular woman who you'd taken in, the Torah is amazing, really. It says you have to give her time to get used to her changed status. Right? She's just been robbed away from her land. Maybe her sons, maybe her husband, maybe her family been killed in the war, the males. She's been moved to a foreign place. And you can't marry her immediately. You have to spend some time, I suppose we would call it wooing her, but I'm not sure that's the right term here, but nevertheless, a relationship needs to be built, or at least there's some sympathy for her change of status. And what she needs to get used to. And I'm going to, so does everybody have access to a chumash, first of all? Everybody got a chumash? So there's plenty at the back on the back shelf, because you're going to need it. If you can bring me one of the ones, so I've got the same edition as you. I've got another edition. And in a minute, I'm going to give you a sheet that describes what's in the portion, and you'll see what we're going to do with it. First of all, let me just call up Jane. Ta'mod tamad chava bat Moshe David befegela deklo brachot la Torah. We're still going to say the blessings for Torah study. Baruch Adonai Hamorach leolam va'ed. Amen. So I'm now going to distribute to you a sheet. One, two there for you too. Just take one and pass one on. Three there. I'm going to give it all to you in a minute, don't worry. Everything will be revealed. I never leave you in the lurch. You only need one sheet, that's all you need for a minute. One single sheet. Now what you can see I've described here, I call it Kiteitzei, Deuteronomy 21:10 to 25:19, and it's a miscellany of legislation. Right? It contains large amounts of legislation, some of which appears not to be related to anything else. But let's so quickly go through what we've got. So I've already described marriage with a woman captive. We've got the rights of a firstborn in a polygamous society. Generally, the firstborn son, of course. You're going to have time to study this in a bit of detail. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to pick something in a minute. So just listen to me for a minute, and then you'll be able to go through the text. You'll have all the time you want. So the rights of the firstborn in a polygamous society is about the fact that generally the firstborn son was supposed to inherit. But we know in the Torah it often didn't happen. Esau, Jacob. We think of lots of examples. But the Deuteronomy is trying to say if a man has a second wife, or either because he's allowed to marry as many wives as he likes, provided they're all single, or he's widowed, or something else happens, and he might be tempted to show preference to the child of the second wife. If the first wife has a child, that one inherits. You'll see that. There's punishment of children, fascinating. I'll do that with you some other time. You can pick that if you wish, but I don't suggest it. There's what you do with the body of an executed criminal, which has something to do with, has an impact on modern, why we have quick funerals. It's returning lost and assisting fallen animals. It's whether women can wear men's clothing. It's removal of mother bird with young. It's putting a parapet on a building, on a roof of a building when you build it. It's things you can't mix together. Tzitzit, you know about. I don't recommend adultery, rape, and forbidden relationships, but if that's what you want to study, it's there in some detail. Sanctity of a military camp, asylum for escaped slaves, the prohibition on prostitution, all about loans and repayment, and if you take things as collateral for a loan, how do you deal with that? Making sure you fulfill your vows in a timely fashion. Quite interesting, what you can do with the neighbour's unharvested crops. Forbidden and levirate marriage is in 2 sections. Deferment of military service, if you have a good reason. A bit on leprosy, I wouldn't recommend that. Timely payment of wages. Transgenerational punishment. If the parents do something wrong, can you penalise the children? Protection of the vulnerable, gleanings for the poor, limits on flogging, that's when you're using it as a punishment. Muzzling of an ox and donkey together. Intervention if you see a fight going on. What's appropriate? Weights and measures. Remembering Amalek. Now, what I'm going to suggest you do, you can either do this on your own or you can do it in pairs, is that I give you about, certainly not more than 10 minutes, and you pick something that you're interested in. You read it and you think about its context. Why might it have been written at the time it was written? And then, does it have any current relevance? And then be prepared to just share it with us. If you don't want to share it with us, I'm not forcing anybody to, but it will be helpful because we might pick different ones, you might pick the same ones. And if we get through that very quickly, I'll do one myself, but if we don't need to, you hear enough of me and do it another day. So there we are. You've got quite, I challenge anybody who couldn't find something interesting in this selection. You'd have to be pretty unthoughtful not to find one thing. You think, oh, I better have a look at that. And if there are notes, by all means read the notes. They may tell you more what's helpful. I'll give you probably not more than 10 minutes. If that seems too long, you run out of time. But some are shorter, some are longer. Pick 2 or 3 or 4. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry, I'm giving you the page. If somebody gives page 840, it goes through. Sorry, I haven't got a copy of your copy, so let me get one. Ouch. If you can't find the bit that I've made reference to, ask me and I'll find it for you. It starts on page, and you can make a bit of noise, you don't have to do it in silence, you can talk to each other if you want to. It starts on page 840. You've got the remnants of chapter 21, that should be the opening one. Have I got 21:10, and it goes as far as about page. There we are. You want another one? Oh, I can give you one. I give you one that won't have Hebrew in it. I give you a modern English translation, very modern. Would you like that one? Or I can give you one that's a halfway house. It's a more modern English with Hebrew. But this is a fantastic one. This is called the Gender Sensitive Edition. This is the newest one. Here we are. I thought if I gave you all the same one, it would be easier because. Right, let's have a look. Maybe I might have done something wrong. What are you trying to find? No interest on loans. Right. Chapter 20. 20 to 21 is on the next page. Yeah. You shall not lend upon interest to those. Okay. I might have done something wrong. It's quite possible. 24. Yeah, but that's the beginning of 24, so you need to go to verse 17. I should have made that, there we are. About justice, widows, there's all things about there. I should have made it clear that I'm giving you the chapter and the verses. Okay? I realise for the people on Zoom, this is a bit. You are not able to put the portion up for them, are you? On my document, Michael will have a chumash with him. Lynn probably's got a chumash. She's in Reading, she might not have. But what I could do is give you that's in you, so you've got a copy. Talk to him. Can I speak to him now? Lynn, can you hear me? Lynn, can you hear me? Lynn, can you hear me?
I can't hear you very clearly, Danny.
All right, we've heard you loud and clear. Hang on. Peter, can you hear me? I'm going to get a bit closer in a minute, Lynn. James, can you hear me? Yes, I can. There's James moving. James, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I heard you.
I could hear you, James. I couldn't hear anything else.
Can you hear us, Danny? Lynn, can you hear me?
Yes, very loudly, James.
Yeah. I can hear you.
Can you hear us, Danny?
Yes, but I don't want to hear you. I want you to hear me. But if I hear you, everybody else can hear you in the congregation. So we're going to mute you again. Now I know that you can hear me. So we're doing something a bit different today. So you need to have you got a chumash in front of you with a Torah portion in it? You've not got one at home anywhere? Can you grab one? Okay. So what? Did you hear me when I read out what was in the Torah portion? Did you hear that? If you heard that. So if you tell me one that you're interested in, if you remember from that long list, which we're going to try and get to you. Or if you put in the chat something you're interested in, I'll make a comment. That you heard, I'll make a comment on it. Yes, I'll put one on the thing now. Had about 7 minutes. I put it on which reading desk? Get rid of everything else. There? There? Down a bit. There? Give you a couple more minutes. You've got 5 people on Zoom. If we unmute them, they could contribute, couldn't they? Yeah, we can turn the volume down a bit. Okay. I'm going to suggest, we're coming to the end of our 10 minutes, that we do this. I'm going to go through the portion by headline, as I've done on the sheet. And then if there's anything you want to add or ask or contribute, you'll do so. Yes? Is that all right? Yeah, everybody get me? So, we begin with, as I said, the question of when you go to battle and you take effectively a woman slave and you decide you want to marry her, what must you do about it? Anybody take an interest in that one? You did. Anything come out? Well, the answer is. So let me explain. So the question that Anita raised was, when we're thinking about women captives, are we just such disgraceful people that you have to write anything down? The answer is yes. The assumption is that human beings, including Jewish ones, can behave in barbarous ways. And putting down the law is a way to remind you of what being a Jew, what obligations there are on being a Jew. And here, let's be clear, we have to put it in its context. Its context is that taking women after battle was a perfectly acceptable thing to do around the world at the time. But what there's something subtle here is that if you take somebody as a slave and then you decide you want to marry her, you have to try and bring the woman along with you, is actually what it's saying. Prepare her for a change in status. She's already had one change in status. She was a woman in a household. She's now a slave. Now you want to make her a woman of the household, but a different household that she's not used to probably by tradition. And anyway, you're her captor. And so it says, I mean, it's not a perfect system, but it says you have to take into account her needs, some of her needs. So first of all, you have to give her time to mourn the fact that she's lost what she's lost. And then you have to give her time, because the likelihood is that when people are captured, they're not often in the best of shape in terms of health and how they look and all those things. Give people time to recover themselves. And that's what's being said there. Particularly, give her time to grieve for the fact she's probably never going to see her parents again because you've already killed them in the battle. I mean, probably you've killed them in the battle, and if not, effectively she's never going to see them again because she's now captured and she's never going to go back to them. That's what usually happens. So I always say about the Torah, you can't pretend that certain things, unpleasant things didn't happen in Torah. The question is the Torah any advance on what was happening generally elsewhere? And this appears to be an advance. It makes some acknowledgement that women aren't simply the spoils of war. And they are the spoils of war, but at least they have feelings which you need to take into consideration, particularly if you want to change what would be the usual status, to make her a wife rather than a slave. We don't know which the woman preferred. Some women might prefer to be a slave rather than be a wife of a captor. We don't know that. Okay? Good. Of course. Well, it's describing, he is changing his behavior because actually he could keep her as a slave and she has no rights. He is inviting her, it doesn't say whether he could force her, but he's inviting her to become a wife, which will require him changing his behavior to her. Right? But this, you have to understand that the Torah is written at a time when men go to war primarily. The men get killed in battle, or with the after effects of battle, and women are part of the booty that is left behind. No, listen, I'm not seeking to make any excuse for what the Torah is saying, but I do think you have to understand it as, I think, an attempt to see things a little bit differently. I mean, not as perfectly as we would want them to be seen, but a little bit differently. A fair point. Okay. I've now lost my sheet now. Okay. So did anybody ever look at the rights of the firstborn in a polygamous family? Correct. Because what they fear is that the man who has a second wife, or even without a second wife actually, could love a different. We had this a couple of weeks ago. It's not about which child you love, it's about the law. The law is the first inherits. Right? So you might say, oh, well, I love my second child better, I want to leave them more, or no. And in a way, that takes out the idea about which is your favourite child. Even with only one wife, never mind if you have stepchildren. So that was the law at the time, the firstborn inherits. And you, as an over-emotional parent, can't change that bit of the law because you think it's better to, you love that one more. Does that answer the question, Jane? Yeah. Okay. Good. Yep. Firstborn male. Well, I'm not making any secret. The Torah is primarily patriarchal. Kingship went through, Jewishness went through, tribe went through, land went through, inheritance went through the male. Good question. That's why you get the daughters of Zelophehad in the book of Numbers, where usually, until the daughters appealed to Moses, it would go to the brother, the father's brother. And they appealed and said this was unfair. It's not our fault we don't have any brothers in the family. They had a slightly different issue. It wasn't about women so much. It was about the land would go out of the local family or whatever it was. Still be probably within the tribe, but out of the local family. Good. Okay. Punishment of children. I'll do that with you some other time, unless somebody looked at it. Great, I'm glad you didn't today. Body of an executed criminal. Anybody look at that? Just very simply, one of the reasons why Orthodox Judaism still insists on quick burial, by the way, it's probably pragmatic, actually, but in the near Middle East, if you kept a body for a long time without mortuary and freezing facilities, things happen to the body. But the rule is here that even if you execute somebody, hanging or stoning or whatever it is, you don't leave the body overnight. There are other traditions where you leave the body for ages as a warning to other people. Jewish tradition, it says if you bury a criminal who's a capital crime, who's offended against you by coming out capital crime, how much the more so should you bury your relatives? That's why Orthodox tradition, not progressive tradition, Orthodox tradition insists on the same day if it's possible. You don't leave it overnight. Returning of lost and assisting fallen animals? Okay. Any comment?
Well, it's basically saying you don't know the person who's gone with the animal. You keep it, but it don't come after that because you've got the stuff.
That's right. So we're seeing here the beginning of property law. If somebody else owns an animal, they own an animal. The question is, what happens if you don't know who owns it? What can you do with it? And what they're really saying here is you have to be very careful because it still belongs to somebody, even though you don't know who the owner is, it still belongs to somebody else. So can you slaughter it? Probably not. And you certainly have to give a reasonable length of time. So not a bad opening for legislation on that. That's a very interesting question, and I'm afraid I don't know what the answer is. But it is very interesting. I mean, there will be a law, I just don't know what it is. I've never been asked that question before. My instinct would be to say that if you fed the animal and looked after it, the produce become yours, but I don't know that I'd have to check. That's a very good question. Yes, I don't know where that comes from, but I mean, yes. I mean, that's why the modern legal system decides if you occupy something, I think it's for 20 years, generally, but not always, you have certain rights over it. It's not always true, but sometimes true. Partly because, I guess, it becomes very complicated. Ownership of things becomes very complicated. And so they're looking for some simplicity. Simplicity, if you've lived on a piece of land for 20 years, you can have it. Now, depends whether you've been secretive about it, or whether you took advantage of the owner of it, or But if the owner has neglected it, because that's the other thing, if you own something, if you possess something, you also have some responsibility to look after it. And if you've let it go by letting somebody else in it for 20 years, suddenly you wake up and realise it's worth a lot of money and say, oh, can I have it now? So there's always a balance to be struck. Good.
What about the rare occasions where somebody goes home and wants to withdraw baby?
Yes. Now there have been cases of that, as you know. I mean, there used to be a case where they thought it was deliberate, where you'd swap. But now I can't remember what the Orthodox law says. I think biology probably in traditional law would triumph. So even if you brought up the child for 15 years and then discovered by, I mean, of course, in those days you didn't discover really, but today you could discover DNA. But let's say it was a youngish child, I think probably would have to be returned to its parents. I think. Good question. Very good question. But you can see what the Torah is raising for all of us. Now, if we were in a rabbinic seminary, we'd now go away and the Rosh of the yeshiva, who's me, who doesn't know very much, would be saying, yes, well, if you look in this tractate and find here and look at this commentary, you'll get the answer. And we'd look at it together. But we don't have 7 years in yeshiva. We've got another few minutes. Clothes of the opposite sex, not very important these days. I mean, just to simply say this, if nobody looked at it, what is appropriate for one gender? Somebody said men shouldn't wear skirts, right? If you're Scottish, you definitely might. Okay? I mean, so the question, so part of the challenge is clothing really, it's sociological rather than, I mean, the Torah pretends that there are things that are men's clothing and things that are women's clothing. I'm not sure that's really what it was about. I think it possibly was about taking up military uniform. Hidden behind it was the possibility that women weren't supposed to go to war. If you couldn't take men's uniform, protective uniform, you couldn't go to war. That's a possibility. There are all sorts of other possibilities about whether it refers to cross-dressers, even if they were known in those times, all sorts of other things, I don't know. Removal of mother bird with young. Anybody look at that? Tell us what you found out. Right. Yep, that's a modern interpretation. The previous interpretation, the Torah seems to imply that you can take the eggs, but you have to not do it in a way that is deeply distressing for the mother bird. So you shoo away the mother bird and then take the eggs. Now, of course, they don't understand the whole psychology that birds may come back and find the nest empty. That may have an impact. But they knew enough to know that if you've ever seen a mother bird try and protect its nest, if you try and take the eggs when the mother bird's there, she rightly becomes quite aggressive about it and appears to be distressed and makes a lot of noise. So, probably, but very interesting to think about how you would use that to establish some of the things you've just made reference to. Parapet on a building roof. I knew you would like that one, Mark. I thought, shall I send this one to Mark in advance? Tell us. Exactly. Exactly. You have a responsibility, your property, you have a responsibility somewhat for people's stupidity. Now, the other problem was that people used to sleep on roofs. Right? In Middle Eastern countries, people sleep on roofs. And if you're sleeping on a roof, there's a lot of you, and one of you turns over and falls down, and that's a tragedy for everybody. You put a parapet around, that can't happen. That's probably more what it is thinking about, rather than silly people who climb on roofs and fall through. And again, there's always a balance to be struck between what responsibility do I have as the owner of a property. Because actually, if I build a roof, why would I expect some young yobbo to be jumping on my roof and fall through and kill themselves? Exactly. And if you remember, there were cases where somebody tried to sue the police because the police had chased this guy across the roof and then he fell through. So who was responsible? I'm very clear, if you're in the midst of a criminal act, you're basically responsible, in my view. That's my private view. The law and Jewish tradition may say different things. But again, all beginning... And this is old stuff, remember. This is not new modern legislation. Forbidden combinations. Anybody have a look at that? I'll just say briefly then. There appears to have been a prohibition against mixing things together. It was a bit, I can only describe it as a bit of a yuck factor. And we know that mixing crops sometimes means the crops don't grow as effectively. Mixing animals, often the produce is infertile. And so there appears to be a general prohibition on mixing of things, which Mary Douglas, who was a very famous commentator of the book of Leviticus, thinks is just an ancient taboo about mixing things. And of course now today we're so mashugana, we have it in shutness where you can't mix two types of material in clothing. That's a model. Yes, it applies to all sorts of, and there's a general prohibition in Jewish law against hybridization of produce. Particularly in Israel. In Israel, you shouldn't find hybrid products. There's a different raw or land culture outside of Israel. Tzitzit, I hope nobody bothered with that, but if they did, I hope I won't offend anybody. Good. Adultery, rape, and forbidden relationships. It's important, but okay. Sanctity of military camp. Anybody look at that? Very interesting. You have to keep the camp tidy, right? Asylum for escaped slaves. Against prostitution. Now, nobody looked at those two. No interest on loans, repayment, and collateral. Yes, and the question is, who is your own, of course. That's why, and this has come through into Islamic law, that's why if you're a Muslim and you want to borrow for a mortgage, they have a legal fiction, so you don't pay interest. It's called Sharia compliant. Meets the requirements of Islamic law. And there's also a thing here about, I don't know if you got this, Mark, about collateral. If you've got something that belongs to somebody else against a loan, how you can, what's the word, redeem it. That's right, thank you. That's also true. Christian tradition took this to say that Christians couldn't lend to Christians, that's why Jews became their money lenders. But we can't do, exactly. And when they became very rich, they then whacked them for being very rich on it. I was going to say something that's gone out of my mind that might come back. Time of fulfillment of vows is not particularly interesting, but unless anybody looked at it. Anybody look at neighbours' unharvested crops? Somebody must have done, surely. That's, let's have a look at it. It's 23, 25, and 26. 26. So, if you're nowadays, of course, if we walk through blackberry branches, what they call blackberry bushes that are in the public, you see people taking blackberries. You could do that in somebody's private land, enough to eat while you were hungry. That's the first thing. But you couldn't take a whole bag and say, well, I'm taking it home to make a crumble in somebody's private land, but you could eat as you were going through. This appears to be passers-by. And then the question is, well, does that apply only to workers, or is it people passing through and so on? But you're not allowed to cut it down and take it away, effectively. And I note my comment says there's a whole thing about Jesus doing plucking ears of grain when passing through grain fields. They're rebuked by the Pharisees, but only for doing it on the Sabbath. There we are. I mean, that's not true. Pharisees wouldn't necessarily rebuke them, but the Gospels wanted to portray the Pharisees as excessively strict and unreasonable about the Jewish law. That's why Jesus came along, was all really cool and offered something different. Okay. Forbidden and levirate marriage. Anybody? Well, I've talked about that in terms of King Henry VIII. I'll talk about that on another day. Deferment of military service. Quite interesting, this. This is about, if you're a young man and you haven't yet consummated your marriage, you're betrothed and haven't consummated your marriage, you've built a vineyard but you haven't tasted the first grapes, you can be exempt from military service. And by the way, if you're frightened, you could also be. If you make such a fuss that you're frightened, I think that's for a different reason, that's because of military discipline. You can be excused military service. Not having flat feet, though, that isn't one of the things to be doing. Nobody bothered with leprosy, did they? No? Timely payment of wages, anybody look at that? Basically, if you employ somebody, you have no idea what the effect of withholding their wages, even temporarily, might mean. So if you say to somebody, I'm going to pay you daily, and you say, oh, I forgot to go to the bank today, I'm not paying you today, you don't know whether they're going to be hungry that night, or won't have anywhere to live. But once you make an agreement, you stick to the agreement. You pay the wages, doesn't mean you can't pay them on a weekly basis, that's what's agreed. Then you shouldn't defer it and say, oh, well, I haven't got enough cash this month. It's wrong to do so. Better that you go hungry than the person that you employed. Anybody look at transgenerational punishment? 24:15. Parents should not be put to death for children, nor children be put to death for parents. A person should be put to death only for his own crime. Seems to me fairly standard. But, there are societies where you can offer a member of your family in place of you to carry out, to do the punishment. I think protection of the vulnerable, widow, orphan. Anybody look at that? Anything to say? Norma, did you look at that one? Oh, sorry. Protection of the vulnerable, the widow and the orphan. Were you looking at that one? Yes, very standard. And widow and orphan are not the category, not the, how do you say it in law? They're just examples. They're not every case. Really, this is about how you protect vulnerable people in your society. Gleanings for the poor. Anybody look at that? That's a corner of the field you leave ungleaned, so that anybody who needs to, and it's not for you to decide who needs to, can take produce if they're hungry. The beginnings of the welfare state, as we would now have it, I guess. Limits on flogging. I don't suppose anybody bothered to look at that, did they? It's if it's a punishment. Muzzling the ox and the donkey together. Again, we've got this mixing that may have been prohibited. But another rule is that there's a general rule about not being cruel to animals. Donkeys and oxen are at different heights and have different strengths. If you try and put two of them together, it puts a lot of strain on the donkey. Better to have two of the animals of the same strength and the same height. Intervention in a fight, okay. Weights and measures. Okay? Oh, why? What didn't you understand? Yes. Yes. Basically about honesty in trade. So you don't say, oh, well, Mark's coming, he looks pretty rich, so I'll put, when he asks for a pound of grain, I'll only give him 3/4 of a pound of grain, because he can afford it, doesn't matter. Whereas he's coming along, he's poor, you don't change the weights are the same, because the weights are an independent system of weight, primarily what it's about. And we read it in Leviticus over, is it Leviticus? I think, over Yom Kippur. Sorry? Go on. Oh, right, go on then, tell us about remembering Amalek. Right, well, Amalek, of course, is the person who attacks the back of the caravan of the slaves as they're going through the desert. So he finds the weakest point and attacks it. And of course, later on, it says that Haman was also an Amalekite. So that's why it's called Zachor, the Shabbat before Purim. Remember what the Amalekites did to you. Okay? Well, we've been quite a long time on that, but I hope you enjoyed that as something a bit different than me just reading to you. Yes, of course. Yeah. Well, well, I don't really, the truthful answer is I don't know. Bear in mind, of course, that there are some groupings. So a lot of it comes under family law to begin with. So my text here defines it first as family law, then laws of kindness, and then it says, agree with me, there's a miscellaneous lot, and then there's a second miscellaneous lot. We don't know originally which bits were supposed to be read. Maybe they only read the family law bits the first time, or we don't know whether the Torah was originally for public reading. We don't really know why this was all put together in this way. All this has to be put somewhere. No, I've forgotten. I should know, but I've forgotten. Send me a little email and I'll look it up. Send me who else asked me a question I couldn't answer? You've got to send me emails about these questions I can't answer. It's very interesting. When is that? No, it's quite late. Because don't forget they had two different ways of reading it. Some people, one tradition read the Torah over 3 years. They didn't have weekly portions. Well, they did, but they were longer. One read it over a year. So there were two traditions. One that you read Genesis and Exodus in year 1, Leviticus, a bit of Numbers in year 2, and Numbers and Deuteronomy in year 3. And that was what's called the triennial cycle. There's also for a single unicycle, or whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called. No, where you read it through the whole year. Because remember, Simchat Torah that we have now, and I'm going to conclude with this, is a very late festival. It doesn't come into the Gaonic period. No such thing as Simchat Torah. There was Shmini Atzeret, we don't really know what that's about either. But it's relatively late, but I can't tell you how late. Okay, we're going to stop there because we used up a lot of time, but I hope you enjoyed something a little bit different today. And now I'm going to invite you to come and conclude our blessing and conclude our Torah reading. And then we'll have the scroll dressed while some does community prayer. Amen. So not only have you read the blessing, but you've actually studied what you read. Right. Unity prayer. Sorry. Yes, please.
Please stand for the community blessings. Everybody else is standing. Our God, whose dominion is everlasting, we ask you to bless their Majesties King Charles and Queen Camilla and all the royal family, and to send guidance to all those who govern this country. Help us to be good citizens, working together for justice and peace at home and abroad. Bless this holy community and all holy communities, and support the life and work of all who labour for their welfare. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessing on the state of Israel and all who live there. Give wisdom and understanding to its leaders, and friendship and compassion to the people, so that there may be lasting peace in its borders and in its homes. Soon may your promise be fulfilled, for Torah shall come out of Zion, and the word of God from Jerusalem. We ask you to listen to our prayers and to look on us kindly, supporting those who are troubled, consoling the bereaved, sending relief to those in pain or anxiety. As you bless our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and our mothers, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless our own congregation, all other congregations gathered in prayer, and everyone who responds to the needs of community. May such be the divine will, and let us say, Amen.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado. Let us remain standing. Turn to page 213 for the alternative Aleinu. We prepare then for the Kaddish. Page 213. Let us read together. Page 213. And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power, and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then both men and women will be gentle, and then both men and women will be strong, and then no person will be subject to another person's will. Then all will be rich and free and varied, and then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many, and all will share equally in the earth's abundance, and all will care for the sick and the weak and the old, all will nourish the young, and all will cherish life's creatures, and all will live in harmony with each other and earth, and then everywhere will be called Eden once again. I ask you now to turn to page 524. We prepare to recite the Kaddish. We think particularly first of Lockie, Frankie and Jane, and to your families. Your family, which is a rather large one. I met many of them last night, rather lovely. We send out love and our condolences, and hope that the numbness and the pain will ease a little. And you will, even more than you do today, appreciate everything he brought towards you. We also mark the art sites of the following: of Arnold Lee, father of Jacqueline and Naomi; of David Lee, husband of Adele; of Dorothy Conway, mother of Janice Bendel; of Edward Rowlands, father of Leonard; of Helen Cohen, mother of Betty West; of Muriel and Sam Legon, parents of Carol Zacks; and of Trudy Grunstein, mother of Gerald Granston. Of them all we say Zichronam Levracha. May their memories serve as an inspiration and a privilege to, and we feel even more the privilege of having been a part of their lives. Let us together recite the Kaddish. Page 524. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah. Alma divra chirute yamlich malchute. V'chayechon u'yomechon. V'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Agala v'izman kariv v'imeru. Hey shemei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach, yishtabach, v'yitpa'ah, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal. Shemei dekodesha barichu. Le'ela min kol bechata v'shirata, ushbechata v'nechamata, amiran balma v'moru, Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'moru, osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol b'nei adam, v'moru, amen. May great peace descend from heaven and abundant life be granted to us, to all Israel, to all the peoples of the world. let us say, Amen. Please be seated for just a moment. The first thing is to say that our sound announcement about Lockie went out this morning. As soon as we have details of funeral and shiva, we'll send that out too. The only other announcement I want to make really is this coming weekend. It's Friday night service at 8 o'clock. And Shabbat morning includes the bar mitzvah of Benjamin Young. I don't think there's any other. Your Holy Day tickets will arrive very soon if they haven't already arrived. If you have the wrong number or you're concerned about anything, please either contact the office or contact me and we'll be able to assist you. Anything else I need to say now? Oh, Saturday, so first Shabbat in September. Yeah, the 4th is a Friday night, 6 o'clock musical service with Emma and Rachel. Rachel Weston will officiate on the 5th at the Bat Mitzvah of Amarachi Dyke. And in the evening, Saturday, and in Saturday night at 8 o'clock, 8:30, will be Slichot, will be our Slichot service that Rachel will have. There's some refreshments as well. And you're very unlucky, I'll be back in time to assist Rachel. What are we going to end with?
I've done the long. No, the nice one.
Erem kol yetzini Nasa v'chefza kol Azai melech Levadoyim lo Haya v'hu hoveh V'hu yeh b'tzim Hamshila lahachbira li reshit v'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz ha'am v'hueli v'chayali v'zuhem li be'etzara v'hunisi u'manos li manat kosi b'yom ekran רוחי ועד ישן ויעירה ועם רוחי גבייתי אדוני לי ולואי אדון עולם השם הלך בטרם כל יציא נברא לעת נשא וחפץ הכל אזי מלך Shabbat Shalom. Thank you to Natalie. Thank you to Phil at the back doing our Zoom. To Barbara for getting the synagogue ready. To Marianne who's doing Kiddush. We've got Jonathan, I think, on security outside. In the middle of summer, we've still managed services every Friday and every Saturday. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. No, you can take it if you want, or not. How many of them survived? there's a Jewish news out there on High Holy Day preparation news. Barbara?
Sorry?
There's a Jewish news and a High Holy Day
I've
preparation news.
got both, thank you. Well, the Jewish news I get when I go to get the dollars at the deli.
Can I take the follow to the nuns in Walsingham today? I'm going to see the nuns in Walsingham.
Oh, gosh.
Is that all right?
Yeah, sure. I got some mini bagels if you'd like to take those as well.
Are they left over then?
Yeah, they're for, we didn't use them last night. I put them in the freezer.
All right, then.
Yeah, they're in my bag. I'll give you in a second.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2.